Bonjour à tous, j'espère que vous allez très bien, français 3 aujourd'hui. Alors, ce que nous allons faire pour l'agenda, c'est les compléments d'objets indirects et votre warm-up. So, what we're going to be talking about today, let me move that, Ooh, is indirect object pronouns versus direct object pronouns. Okay. And then we're going to look at some examples and then we'll take a look at your warm up. That will be your assignment. So, it has been a minute since we last talked about direct object pronouns, right? So, remember, before we get to our indirect ones, let's review our direct ones. Direct object pronouns are pronouns that replace a noun that is receiving the action of the verb, right? So, for example, je veux le crayon. I want the pencil, right? If you wanted to say to avoid redundancy, repetitiveness, this le crayon is your direct object, or in French they call it a complément d'objet. So your direct object is le crayon because what do you want? Le crayon. It's receiving the action. I can replace le crayon with a direct object. So for instance, le, la, les. So I look here, crayon is masculine, singular, so I would want to use the masculine singular, which corresponds to the article, right? So it goes before the verb, je le veux. I want it, right? There's nothing obstructing or coming between the verb and the object that's receiving the action. That's your direct objects, okay? When we talk about indirect objects, we are talking about objects that are not directly receiving the action of the verb, which means there's usually a preposition that goes with that. So is to, okay? Now, where French and English differ in one point is some verbs are usually followed by the preposition okay? For example, in your warm-up, you're going to see the verb donner, comme ça, or offrir, offrir, right? So both of those things mean to give, and they are usually followed by right? It's implied within because you're giving something to somebody. So, for example, je donne la voiture à ma mère, right? I give the car to my mother. If you look at this sentence, la voiture is the direct object, okay? Because you are giving what? The car. To the mother is your indirect object, right? Because it's being obstructed. There's a preposition here. So that preposition is a signal to you that it is indirect, right? So I give the car to my mother. If I wanted to say I give it or I give the car to her, I could say je donne, je lui donne la voiture, which would be I give the car to her. So these are your indirect object pronouns. So for singular, which would be my mother, right? It's one person, my mother. We have lui, then to, and this. So that would be like to me, to you. If we have plural, it's to us, to you, to them. Okay? So, pour exemple, to me, and this is a page in your book as well, so I put that on Teal Campus, as well as a video that kind of reiterates what I'm talking about. To you, which is singular, to him or her. And this is to us, to you, plural, and to them. Okay, so that's the difference here. There's that to, right? Preposition a. So for example, in your warm-up, number 1, it says in English, they are going to buy it. Okay, so there's a couple things going on here in this sentence. They are going to buy it. When we look, we have they are going, so that is going to be the verb aller, so that's our vont. And then we have another verb, acheter, right? So they are going to buy it. So you have to determine if it is indirect or direct. So how can we determine that? Well, if we look here, there's no prepositions, right? There's no to involved. So I know that the it is going to be either masculine or feminine. I give you that it is masculine. So if this is masculine, you would say, ils vont l'acheter, right? They are going to buy it. When you have two verbs, it goes in between. If it's one verb, it goes in front, right? So if you were just saying they are buying it, you would say ils l'achètent, which would be slightly different. There's no going, so it would come just before the one verb. Okay? So that's your number 1. They are going to buy it. Okay? Ils vont l'acheter. Let's take a look at another example. Fais voir. So if we wanted to say she asked me a question. All right. So asked in French could be demander or poser. Both of those have that kind of implied preposition, right? Because you're asking a question to somebody. So it is a little bit interchangeable here. So to say she asked me a question, we would say elle me, because it's me, right? And then our verb, and this is in past tense. So it's in passé composé. Elle m'a, I have to get rid of this, posé une question. She asked me a question. Elle m'a posé une question. Okay? So again, it can be a little bit tricky, and again, I will attach a video for you to watch about this, as well as my video, in case you need some extra reinforcement. Again, this is what your warm-up will look like. And I give you some information, and I've underlined what you're replacing, right? So we did this one together. You're replacing the it, and it is masculine. So you would replace that with a direct object pronoun. Number 2 is offrir, which has that's what the stars are, right? Those asterisks are going to be indirect. He gave to him a present. Isabel gave to them a spatula. They spoke to us yesterday, etc. So be aware of that. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. I will be here the whole time. A bientôt.